pass it on yourselves. Well, over the past couple of years, those of us who live in Mountain Ranch and in the Fire Scar have become very much more engaged with county politics, community concerns, and with our sheriff's department, because they have been central to so much of what has gone on here. We've come to rely on them in many ways. Okay. I'll have to find my sweet spot. So we have our candidates for the June election are here with us tonight. You can see their names. We have Pat Garrahan, Gary Stevens, and Rick Day Basilio, and they will introduce themselves to you in a minute. The format is that I'm going to ask them 3 questions. Each one of them will answer the question. The first question, all 3 will answer. Then the second question, all 3, and then the third. They will have 3 minutes each to answer each time. I come in this room and my voice goes away. I've never figured it out. So excuse me for being so thready. You have all submitted written questions. Is there anybody who has a written question that they have not yet submitted that they want to submit? Okay. After the first 3 questions, the additional questions will be given to me by Jim So, who's going through them to make sure that we don't have duplicates. And there will be no questions from the floor or discussion from the floor. You're really here to listen and to take in what each man has to tell you. Do you have any questions of me before we go forward? It's all clear? Good. Once we get to the end of the questions, then the candidates will remain for a period of time up until 9 o'clock if you want to approach them and ask personal questions or have a personal conversation. I assume you're all ready to do that. Okay. So let's get started. Okay, these are 2 questions that were feedback from other people I have put together. I selected 3 areas that I thought were of concern to our community. The first one is immigration, illegal immigration. Let's assume that a crime has been committed. The alleged perpetrator is in custody, and it has been determined that the accused is not a citizen of the United States, but is in fact here illegally. ICE issues a detainer. The bond has been posted, and the accused is scheduled to be released from custody until a scheduled court appearance. Will you hold the accused for ICE or release the person into the community at large? Will the severity of the charges influence your decision? And finally, how does the sanctuary state status influence your ultimate decision? Yes, but this is the first question. And so would each of you then tell us a little something about yourself as you start, and then respond to the question. Okay, Pat?
We have 3 minutes to introduce ourselves and answer the question.
No, you can introduce yourself first. I'm sorry. This is my first rodeo, you guys, so bear with me.
Can everybody hear? Good there? Okay. Good evening. Thanks for coming this evening. I'm Pat Garrahan. I'm one of the candidates for Calaveras County Sheriff. I'll spend a couple minutes telling you about myself and my background. I've lived in the county for 26 years. My wife Kate and I raised our kids here. We live over in the Valley Springs, Carson area. So we're not newcomers per se to the county here. I spent 31 years in law enforcement. I started out as a military policeman in the Marines. Worked about 5 years in Flagstaff, Arizona Police Department. And then I went and spent the last 23 years of my career as an Oakland police officer. While in Oakland, I went up through the ranks. I worked narcotics, I worked patrol, I was a dog handler for 14 years. I was promoted to sergeant. I worked supervising officers on the street as a sergeant. I became a lieutenant and then an acting captain. And essentially I was a watch commander at the end of my career there, which means during my shift, I was the senior police person on duty for the city of Oakland. So anything that transpired that had to do with police activities, I was responsible for that. I've covered that there. After I retired, I had an opportunity to work through the Department of Defense for the Marine Corps as a subject matter expert in policing. And I completed 2 combat deployments to Afghanistan with Marine infantry battalions as the battalion commanders and the Marines at large, their police expert, helping them do many of the police-related activities that they were tasked with over there when they captured Taliban, recovering evidence from IED explosions, so on and so forth. I did run for sheriff in 2014 after I returned the second time from Afghanistan. I wasn't elected, but my support has continued to grow, and that's why I'm here this evening, because of that continued support. I taught at Delta College for a little while, and then right now I'm currently the police science teacher at Calaveras High School. I'm invested in the community. I sit on the Jenny Lynn Vets Board. I'm the president. I'm the vice chair of the Calaveras Consolidated Fire Department Board of Directors. I'm the community chairperson for the West Calaveras Rotary. I'm the Calaveras County Marine Corps Toys for Tots coordinator. I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce, so I'm actively involved in a number of things throughout the community. I've got an associate's degree and bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a master's degree in criminology. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay, my name is Gary Stevens, and obviously I'm running for Sheriff of Calaveras County. I've lived here almost 30 years. My wife and I seated over there by my table. We just celebrated our 20th year anniversary last week. I came to Calaveras County after I left the U.S. Border Patrol. Before that, graduated from Napa Valley College with 3 2-year degrees, all in law enforcement, right out of high school. Went to the police academy. After that, I was hired, and I'm a graduate of the U.S. Border Patrol Academy. I worked at the Chula Vista Station down in Southern California before I came to Calaveras County. When I came to Calaveras County, I worked in the jail for 3 months, and then I worked as a deputy beginning in February of 1990. As a deputy here in Calaveras County, I worked as a patrol deputy, a field training officer, a hostage negotiator, a detective, a narcotics investigator, search and rescue manager, and I was a resident deputy in Arnold for 2 years. After I left Calaveras County Sheriff's Office in 2002, I went to work for Amador Sheriff's Office. I worked there for 5 years. I worked patrol for a very short time, detectives, narcotics, and I was a hostage negotiator there as well. I left the Sheriff's Office in 2008, and I went to the District Attorney's Office as an investigator where I'm still employed. My expertise and my experience is not only in Calaveras County, but it's also outside of Calaveras County. Okay, I'm the only one running here before you that's worked here and somewhere else. Additionally, I've worked not only the law enforcement or the patrol side, frontline law enforcement side of our justice system, but where I currently work right now is on the other side, the prosecution side. So I get a better look and I get a better advantage, if you will, at how our justice system works and what's needed to help prosecute cases. Why I'm running for sheriff is plain and simple. I disagree with our current sheriff's administration, their philosophy, and the direction we've gone. I'm the only one running who is pro-ban on the commercial marijuana in Calaveras County, and I've made that very well known and very clear since, well, last year. During my kickoff campaign, I made several points about that, and things are starting to turn around. The county is doing much better. I think we're on a movement to get away from commercial marijuana production and cultivation in Calaveras County, and with the ban being in place, and I think the county's doing better financially, so we are in a much better position right now. I would like to keep that momentum going. This election is not about this election. The next sheriff, and with a few of the other races of our elected officials, is about the next generation. All right, it's not about who gets to be the sheriff or who sits in the chair. It's about the next generation and the future and the direction we're going in this county. And I do have a vision. I've got a recruitment and retention plan. I've got all kinds of other programs, and I'm being told that's it. Thank you.
Good evening. Excuse me, maybe my throat's going too. Good evening, everybody. I'm Rick DiVasilio. I am your sheriff. I've been in this county for almost 40 years. I actually started right down here at Sheldon Basill's house in 1978 is where I moved to. I have been in the county for quite a while. I started with the sheriff's office in 2002. So my early adult life, I grew up in this county, working in this county. As I got married and started raising my kids in this county, I raised 8 foster kids in this county over in the Angels Camp area. Had daughter graduate and a son graduate out of Calaveras, out of Bret Harte High School. Had a stepdaughter graduate out of Bret Harte High School, and 3 foster kids out of Bret Harte High School. And my current wife and I have a daughter who will be graduating out of Calaveras High. So I spent my whole, pretty much adult life up here, and kind of stepped back a little bit. In 91, I moved back down to Central Valley and got into the hazardous waste cleanup business. Did that until 96 when I moved back into the area. Again, worked in the area, got hired by the Sheriff's Department, as I said, in 2002. And once I got into the Sheriff's office, some of the areas I worked in the office was a school resource officer. I did that for about 3 years. I was an investigator, and in a department as small as what we have here in our sheriff's office, I worked all aspects. Worked narcotics, was an investigator, everything from petty thefts all the way to homicides, elder abuse, child abuse, sexual assaults. So I've worked all those types of crimes. Wrong blank here. I know what I did. I've been doing it for a long time. After investigations, I got promoted. Actually, I came out of the school resource officer position, went into the investigation, and went back to patrol, went back into investigation for another couple of years, and I got promoted to sergeant. And 2 years ago in 2016, after Gary Coons passed away, I became your sheriff. In my 3rd budget cycle for this county, and I've been upholding the laws that the county has brought in place. We had an urgency ordinance, and I upheld those laws. When the registered growers were doing what they were supposed to do, we left them alone. If they were registered and they didn't do what they were supposed to do, we had a chat with them. The unregistered growers, as you've seen throughout the newspapers and the internet, we hit them hard, and we've been continuing to hit them hard. As you just saw down in Valley Springs, we took out, we're up to almost 15 homes now, indoor grows that we've eradicated. So I've been doing what the law has provided me to do and allowed me to do, and I'm being told to stop.
Okay. Now, Pat, if you want to start with the question.
Okay, the first question is pertaining to illegal immigration. So the questions within the question are, this individual's been taken into custody. It's determined that they are here illegally in the United States. Now, there's 2 means of being here illegally. Improper entry, which is crossing the border, which is a criminal offense, and then the, for lack of a better term, improper staying. So if we can't prove that they actually illegally crossed, but we know that they're not supposed to be here, or they overstayed a visa or something like that. That's actually a civil action there. It's not a criminal matter. ICE issued the detainer, but the bondsman posted. Now, under the current SB 54, what everybody's calling the sanctuary state, it severely restricts communication between local, state, and federal law enforcement. Well, federal immigration is handled by federal authorities. So in this case, the question is, will you hold the accused for ICE or release the person in the community at large? Well, SB 54, which is currently the law in California, does not allow me as a sheriff or any peace officer in the state to ignore the law and say, well, I don't like it, we're going to hold you anyway. So the person would be released, okay? Now, it says, will the severity of the charges influence your decision? Absolutely. There are 31 enumerated offenses that do allow communication between that. So if they're arrested for a robbery, a burglary, and those sort of, I would consider the major offenses, then communication is allowed, and you can let them know, them being the feds, know that this person's being released. Now, another thing is the sheriff of Orange County, what she's been doing is she just posts the releases of everybody, regardless of their immigration status, and it's made public. So that's a means of alerting federal authorities without being in violation of SB 54. Now, it says, how does the sanctuary state status influence your decision? Well, if it's the law, it's the law, okay? It's not up to me as the sheriff to determine what's unconstitutional. That's why we have courts, and that's why we have legislators to make the law. Now, personally, I think it's a flawed statute because any communication that's restricted between any branches of law enforcement is detrimental to investigations, and ultimately, it's going to be detrimental to the citizens at large because we will not be able to do our job properly if communication is restricted in investigations. Thank you.
Illegal immigration, assuming a crime has been committed and somebody's in custody at the sheriff's office and ICE issues a detainer. All a detainer is a request. All right, it does not allow local law enforcement, and I say local law enforcement, I mean state and local, to hold somebody beyond state and local law. If they want somebody held, they have to get a warrant for that person. When a warrant is issued by the federal government, then we can hold them. There's actually funding that the sheriff's office gets, although I think it's being cut this year, called SCAP, the State Criminal Alien Assistance Program, where we can submit paperwork or request for reimbursement for housing the illegal aliens in our jail. We've been getting it for the last couple of years. And so if we have to release them, they post bail, they have to be released. We cannot hold them beyond what California law allows for. The next question is, will you hold the accused ICE for ICE? We can't hold them. We cannot hold them unless the federal government issues a warrant. A detainer is not a warrant, it's a request. And will the severity of the charges influence your decision? I would love for it to, but it can't. The law is the law. And how does the sanctuary state status influence your decision? It's a bad law. And the federal government currently is suing the state of California to reverse that law because it's unconstitutional. Federal law is supreme. And my opinion, my prediction, when the state of California loses this lawsuit and that law is abolished, the state's going to ask for an appeal and an injunction to keep that law in place while they appeal it. You got to remember, Governor Brown is leaving. This is his last year. So he's going to dump this mess on the next administration. Like I said, my opinion, state's going to file an appeal and try to keep that law in place. And they're going to try to file an injunction because federal law is supreme when it comes to immigration. The state has no say in it. I think that answers, in regards to Orange County, lots of sheriffs were doing that. That Orange County sheriff, when she went on the news, she blew the whistle. Other sheriffs did not want her to do that, but she did that. And they were already doing that. Because it's not against the law, it's public information when somebody's arrested in the court process, as well as the release dates. But she's the one who did that and kind of blew the whistle, and now the state is going to try to close that loophole. This is something that's been in the works for quite a few months, but she, I'm getting 1 minute more. She was not supposed to do that. She kind of broke the inner circle of trust amongst the existing sheriffs in the state that wanted to do this, and that's why it was all over the news. And like I said, now the state's going to try to close that loophole. Thank you.
As Mr. Stevens says, she closed the loop, and I'm one of the sheriffs that she closed the loop on. SB 54 is exactly that. It's a bad bill. Again, going back to the question, the bond's been posted and the accused is scheduled to be released. I cannot hold them. State law overrides me in that aspect. If I was to hold somebody beyond that, it opens up the county to a huge civil lawsuit, and no county can afford what would come from that. It says, will you hold the accused for ICE release or release the person into the community? Again, unfortunately, we have to release them into the community. And will the severity of the charges influence your decision? I don't have that ability to decide whether the severity of the charges. The difference is the district attorney and the courts, they set bail, or courts set the bail amounts. So if the charge is high, or the severity of the crime is high enough, then the bail can be set high enough so that they can't get out. That falls onto the courts, but no sheriff has that ability. How does the sanctuary state influence your decision? Again, we have to abide by state law, and the California State Sheriff's Association, which I'm part of, there's 58 sheriffs in the state, and I have been working with the other 57 along with some other advocates trying to get that law changed. We all do know, or some of you, as Mr. Stevens just said, the federal government has filed a lawsuit against the state of California to get this law appealed. California State Sheriff's Association, which again I am part of, we have been advocating. And to give you a little bit of information, when SB 54 was originally put on the ballot or brought up to everybody's attention by Senator DeLeon out of Los Angeles, the State Sheriff's Association fought him tooth and nail. We actually sat down and met with him up at the Capitol a couple of times, and the bill that you see today is not the bill that he initially initiated. The bill he initially initiated was not going to allow us to talk to any federal law enforcement or ICE for any reason whatsoever. It was basically going to cut us off, and some of the bigger counties that have the ICE embedded into their jails, they were going to be pulled out. So we fought diligently to get it changed. So as bad as it is, it was going to be a lot worse. So the 58 of us made a big change in the way it is right now. Thank you.
Can I just give you, gentlemen, I'm trying to give you a half minute. When I do the one at the half, it's 30 seconds.
Just, feel like I'm on a motorcycle track again.
We'll add an extra one.
Yeah.
Another warning.
Okay, the second question I wrote is a long one. It has multiple parts. It has to do with public safety and, by extension, with the Second Amendment. Calaveras County is a large rural area covering several hundred square miles of hilly terrain where radio and cell service is very spotty. We all know this. Following the fire, my husband and I worked over in the parking lot at the Resource Center every day for some period of time. And one morning I was there, and a man pulled up in a pickup truck and started screaming and cursing me. I was standing on the front steps trying to unlock the door to the trailer to go in, and said he was going to beat the you-know-what out of me because nobody would ever help him. That was his theme song. Nobody ever helps me, and I'm going to beat the stuff out of you because I know you're not going to help me. And this was a young, strong, well-built, tall guy who's marching across the parking lot with blood in his eye. Luckily for me, at that very moment, my husband pulled up in his pickup truck, got between us, and told the guy he would be dealing with him, not with me. So he went and got in his pickup truck and he left. If my husband hadn't showed up, I don't know what would have happened. I went inside immediately and called 911. I got a phone call an hour and a half later from a deputy who was up in West Point. And he said, well, I'll try to stop by sometime today and take a report. He never came. That report never got made. So this was a learning experience for me, and I think all of us who live here realize that even under the best circumstances, help is a long ways away if communications are working. So my question to you, how will you improve your ability to react and respond to emergency situations that result in 911 calls for help? And that has 4 parts. Communications. How will you assure that your deputies have reliable communications with your dispatcher at all times? That they're not up in the hills in dead spots. 2, response abilities. How many deputies will be available during any shift to respond to a call in a very large geographic area? 3, self-defense. How can we best protect ourselves while awaiting a response that may take a half hour or longer to show up? And 4, concealed carry. Do you support our Second Amendment right to self-defense, including issuing concealed carry licenses to community members who qualify? And secondarily, do you propose any new restrictions on carry qualifications? And I'd like to start this time with Gary.
Okay, the 911 calls / communications. Communications has always been poor in this county because the sheriff's office has always used what's called a low band, radio frequency, which works better in the hills. But we used to have 2 repeaters, A and B, and for a while we had a C repeater. Every time it would rain, B repeater would go down, and we would lose our radio communications with our own dispatch. Communications have gotten better because the sheriff's office now has MDTs, or mobile data terminals. They work off of high band. So communications, how will you ensure that your deputies will have reliable communications with your dispatcher at all times? Public safety is first and foremost, beyond anything else. Your mail got stolen out of your mailbox, you're having a dispute with your neighbor, something like what you described should be a priority call. And if somebody calls 911 and there's an active threat or there's an active situation that requires a deputy right now, that should be prioritized. And all of the other, what we call cold calls, should be put on the back burner. I hate to put it that way, but there's a limited number of deputies. And right now, the sheriff's office is losing deputies left and right. They're bailing out of this office and going to work other agencies. Responsibility, that's what I'm talking about. If some agencies, their staffing is low, they only respond to 911 calls. And if you need to make a report, you can go to the office and make a report, or you can do it by phone, or mail in a report. I would really hate to see it come to that here, but public safety is first and foremost. And if somebody calls 911 because they have an active situation where somebody's being threatened, that should be prioritized. Responsibility. How many deputies will be available during any shift to respond to a call in this large area? Like I said, deputies right now are limited, and they're going to become more and more limited because they are leaving this office. Despite getting raises, they're still leaving. Self-defense. How can we best protect ourselves while awaiting a response? You do the best you can with what you have. Okay? Which kind of ties into the next, concealed carry. Do you support our Second Amendment to right to self-defense, including issuing concealed CCWs to people who qualify? Do I propose any new restrictions or on qualifications? No, I do not. Our current in-house policy, which is not on the sheriff's office website, states that you have to have 3 letters of character reference. All right, our sheriff said back in February it was state law. It is not state law. There is no requirement by the state to have 3 letters of character reference. It can be an in-house policy, but it's not state law. If you're going to live out here in a rural area, you should be able to protect yourself because it's going to take a while for a deputy to respond. I do believe and I do say that self-defense is what we call good cause. We don't need 3 letters. We don't need to go have a meeting and listen to the sheriff speak to a large group of people who are just getting issued their permits. Here's your permit. You've taken the class. You've been briefed on the law, when you can and cannot produce your weapon. So, yes, I support it. I want to streamline the process that we have. I would like to put on an online application process that expedites the application process like other agencies outside of Calaveras County have done, and do away with the 3 letters. It's a waste of time, and all it does is take up staff time, because nobody's doing backgrounds on those 3 people that wrote letters on new applications. Who's to say that the applicant didn't write it? So now we're supposed to do 4 backgrounds? It wastes time, and it makes no sense. Thank you.
Alrighty. It is a very large area that we live in. I've always said this is a very large county, but a very small community. As far as our MDTs, the mobile data terminals that my opponent was talking about, they are not run off of high band radio frequency. They are running off of cell tower frequencies. I have implemented, and just so that we're clear, I was not the sheriff when that happened. I just want to be clear about that. Okay. We have what we call a cradle point. It is a unit, it's a power booster basically for a cell signal that we are now having all of our patrol vehicles, all of our new patrol vehicles that we're putting out on the street have this unit. So it enhances the cell signal so that they have MDT service here in Mountain Ranch, up in Railroad Flat. It is an amazing product. I actually bought one for my house. That's how amazing they are. So our service has gotten better. We're in the process of putting up a tower right now over in White Pines, which, believe it or not, will hit this area and the Railroad Flat area up into the West Point area. Radio service has always been problematic in mountainous areas, where we live in, but we are overcoming that. So our radio service is getting better, so our response times are going to get better, and the 911 calls are going to be able to be responded to faster. Response availability. I keep hearing people say that, my staff is leaving. Sure, they're leaving. I just came back from D.C., and out of 39 counties throughout the United States, we're not the only ones that are having this problem. People don't want to be cops anymore because of them being filmed, them being sued. We had 2 cops that just got shot, sitting there having a cup of coffee not too long ago, earlier last week. So people aren't wanting to be cops, so we're going to have a problem down the road. But officers are leaving this department because they're going for better jobs and they're getting overworked right now. That's the biggest issue we're having with that. My program that I do have in place for recruiting, we have an outside company that's helping us recruit, and we will be able to put more deputies on. I'm putting 10 more in the academy this fall. That is going to boost our numbers so I can go back to what we call a 311 plan, so that during our busy times, which is about noon to 3 o'clock in the morning, we'll have 8 guys on the street as opposed to the 3 or 4 that we have now. Self-defense, again, self-defense is paramount, and it does tie into the Second Amendment. I am a proponent of the Second Amendment. I believe everybody that is qualified should have a fire gun and be able to carry a firearm, and be able to protect themselves. The 3 letters, I have the policy right here if you'd like to read it. It's not a state law. If I did say state law, I apologize. I misspoke. It's a county policy that I did not implement, and she's Xing me out. Thank you.
Okay, I think we all know Calaveras County is large. It's just over 1,000 square miles, and various communities spread out through that area there. Question is, how will you assure that your deputies will have reliable communication? Well, we've talked about high band, low band, cell towers, and all that other stuff. That's great. The technology is out there. When I was in Afghanistan, I could talk to my wife, okay, halfway around the world. So why can't we do that here? One of the things that I subscribe to an internet channel that talks about grants and equipment and so on and so forth. And one of the things that came up a while back, it was almost identical to Calaveras County's issue, was that inability to communicate over the airwaves. And they had a project with Motorola, and it was really inexpensive. The two counties combined, fire, local police, county sheriffs, and they made the system work. And I forwarded that information to one of the supervisors, said, hey, this is something we need to look at here. Unfortunately, that person's not in office anymore. But there are programs out there, equipment's out there, we just have to go out, not be satisfied with, well, this is the way it's always been, don't go there because you're not going to be able to talk and fix the problem, not just recognize what it is. Responsibility. What it comes down to is, if you have one call and the deputy is 30 miles away, it's still going to take a while to get there. So one means of reducing response time is to have more people on the street. Now, as the sheriff said, there's 3, maybe 4 on at any one time. That is outrageous. You as citizens should be banging down the doors of the Board of Supervisors. I wrote down, before he mentioned it, 8 officers, or 8 deputies out there at any one time. Now, the way you figure this out is through crime analysis. When do we have the highest calls for service, most serious crimes going on, and in what areas? And then as meager resources you have, you deploy them appropriately. But you still work on getting more people. That's where you go to the Board of Supervisors. What I do not want to see happen is a deputy get killed out there, and we're wringing our hands because law enforcement is always reactive rather than proactive and going, oh my gosh, how could this have happened? If they'd only been able to get on the radio, or if we only had a cover unit closer. We need to avoid that. Self-defense, okay? I would tell people, train. Figure out what those problems might be. Go learn how to shoot, or if you're not into guns, I was a dog handler for 14 years. A dog is a really good means of protection, a guard dog out there. But prepare for it. Being in a gunfight is something that stays with you the rest of your life, okay? It's not something to be taken lightly. As far as carry concealed, I'm an advocate. I can do it because I'm a retired police officer. I think anybody else, so long as they meet the criteria, should be able to enjoy that same rights and freedom. I'm a lifetime NRA member of the California Rifle and Pistol Association. I support the Second Amendment. I would look at it as I want to move towards a shall issue as opposed to a may issue type of a thing, and get rid of the 3 letters. If it's policy, it's the sheriff's office policy, seems like the sheriff ought to be able to change that policy and get rid of those 3 letters. Thank you.
And the final question has to do with cannabis abatement. Cannabis has been the biggest issue perhaps for this county for the last couple of years. And we are now under a ban ordinance, which we can see that is having an impact. The question is, given the reductions in manpower compelled by the cannabis ban ordinance, now this is my understanding, I could be wrong, but my understanding was that the revenues dropped, which required a reduction in staff. If that is true, would you please describe your strategy for controlling non-legal grows and any associated criminal activity with limited resources available?
Well, just so everybody knows, our marijuana team has not been reduced. So that's false information, and actually I'm working on getting 4 more for the marijuana program. As you well remember, last year we did the Operation Terminus. We're going to be doing that again this year. Again, if you read the news and hear what's been going on, we have not slowed down in eradicating the illegal marijuana growers, nor are we going to slow down. We have contact with Fish and Wildlife, the Water Resources Board, and a lot of other entities that have come up to help us, and they will continue to come up and help us so that we can eradicate these. As far as the ban actually comes into play effective June 10th, is my understanding. That is basically the drop dead date that they cannot be growing anymore. So the assumption, and we all know what assume means, is that the registered growers are going to cease and desist. And I know that there are people out there working on another ordinance to try and get on the November ballot. So in the meantime, I'm going to again assume that the registered growers will stop growing, and the illegal growers, they were never going to stop growing anyhow. So we will continue to go after those. We have the manpower, we're boosting our numbers, and pay attention to news because you're going to see a lot more happen. Does that answer your question?
It just gives me a quick follow-on. How is this special marijuana eradication thing being funded then?
The Board of Supervisors has agreed to keep the funding in place for the marijuana grower, for the marijuana program. There was a lot of money received in tax, in Measure C tax. I hear people say that it wasn't. It's all in the general fund. It's just a tax, but it came from the marijuana growers that did pay their tax to the tune of about $13 million. There's about $9 million in cash carry that we will be able to obviously not use all of that, but they have already told us, I was in a meeting 2 days ago with the CAO, that funding will stay in place for code compliance and the sheriff's office to continue to go after those illegal growers.
Cannabis is an issue in Calaveras County, but folks, it is not the only issue out there. Okay? It would appear right now, if you pick up any one of the newspapers here, that cannabis is the only thing that's going on. You see bust after bust after bust out there. So the answer to, given the reduction in manpower, how are you going to handle it? It comes down to good leadership, prioritizing what you have to deal with out there, making some tough calls. Some of the folks in this room tonight, cannabis is the most dramatic thing for them. It's a very emotional topic too, on both sides of the fence. But looking at it, when I'm your sheriff, I've got to make that tough call, is that we may not be able to go out and eradicate X, Y, and Z grow right now because we're having a severe commercial burglary problem in Valley Springs. Now, what's overlooked, I've got a background in criminology, so I like stats and stuff like that. In the past 4 years, for instance, rape has gone up 133% in this county, more than doubled. Robbery has doubled. Let's see here, robberies are up 88% in the last 4 years. Aggravated assault, 78%. Now your property crimes, burglaries were up, went down, but in the last 2 years, they're on the increase again. Same thing with thefts. A few years ago, they were real high. They went down, but now they're increasing again. Auto theft, all of these things. So those are other issues outside of the realm of cannabis that the sheriff and the sheriff's office and the deputies that work there need to be aware of and need to be formulating a plan on how we're going to resolve those issues too. Not every burglary is going to be related to cannabis, no matter how much people want it to be. Some of them may be, okay? They don't all tie together. But what it comes down to, like I said before, is being a good leader, not necessarily wanting to get my picture in the paper once a week. And then we also have to look at, resolving those issues, okay? What is how should I put it? The output versus the outcome. Are we truly eradicating these, or are we just cleaning them out and then they come back another time? So again, that's that follow-up. It ties in with community policing philosophy of assessing the work that you're doing so that you know if your approach to it is having an impact. If it's not, you need to retool and then attack it from a different way. So again, prioritizing those issues, recognizing that there's a whole bunch of different crimes out there, using our media resources where we're going to have the best bang for the best buck at the time. Thank you.
The reduction or perceived reduction in manpower is just that. It's not a real reduction. When the budget was passed last year, the fiscal year that we're in right now, there were 24 empty positions within the sheriff's office: deputies, correctional officers, professional staff, and dispatchers. Several of those were deputies. Those positions, it is a constant moving target trying to keep deputy positions filled. Deputies come, deputies go. We We've always hired primarily new kids right out of the academy, and we need to start focusing on hiring laterals. When it comes to the funding, the Measure C excise tax is in right now a separate fund, a contingency fund. And this is outlined in this CAO's mid-year budget report published in February. He finished it in December. This county is finishing this fiscal year with a projected $9 million surplus. That's TOT, which is a transit occupancy tax, sales tax, and teeter fund. All right? We are not in debt. You'll hear stories about people saying, well, the county's in debt. We owe a lot of money. We still have a AA rating. So the county is in very good financial position right now. And we will be, because we have a board of supervisors that are making better and smarter financial decisions. When it comes to the eradication efforts, last year I started talking to the federal government. They were referred to me. And for the last 2 years, we've had no help from the federal government because the sheriff has said the federal government can't help us. They can't give us money. They won't help us. Okay, they came to me, said they're willing to come in here and help, but they were waiting for what's called the will of the people, see what the Board of Supervisors does. The ban ordinance came into effect this year. They're ready to go. Now the sheriff is saying we'll get help from the federal government. I am wholeheartedly opposed, or an advocate of going out and eradicating, starting with the largest grows, the most egregious grows, because I hear on this campaign trail, I've talked to a lot of people. They're driving down the road and there's guys out there with guns. They've been stopped. How come we're not going after these people first? These are the most egregious. We have a SWAT team. Neighboring counties have SWAT teams. The state has resources. So does the federal government. You know, it doesn't hurt. In fact, it's probably one of the better things to do, start hanging a coyote on the fence now and then, so they get the message, so they get out of this county. Right? We don't want them here. They're not helping the county. They're not benefiting the citizens, and it's a public safety issue. Remember what I said, public safety is first and foremost. I agree with Mr. Garrahan that robberies and burglaries, all overall crimes are up in this county, and not everything is related to marijuana. I agree with that 100%. Public safety is first and foremost, and if we have a rash or we have a problem of violent crimes against somebody, that's where the resources should be going to, not getting people out there to pull plants. There's no reason why we can't start submitting cases. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comprehensive and complete answers. I think we're all learning things tonight, and we really appreciate your contributions. Now we're going to go to the questions that have been submitted from the audience, and you will not have these in front of you, so put your memory hat on. Here's the first one. What are the 2 or 3 most significant current barriers within the Sheriff's Department that are impeding effectiveness of the department's work performance? What will you do to reduce those barriers? How quickly will you take action to eliminate or reduce those barriers? So again, the question is about what obstacles are creating a drag on the Sheriff's Department? And what would you do about those, and how quickly?
Okay, I see the 3 biggest impediments right now within the sheriff's office are a lack of leadership at the top, the office of sheriff, lack of good leadership, low morale throughout the agency. It's been stated in past forums, morale is not an issue there, then it changed to it is, but okay. Well, we've got to figure out what that but is. Why is it an issue? And then the third one is the working conditions, whether it be the equipment, whether it be pay, whether it be the long hours. Board of Supervisors yesterday addressed the issue. That's why many of the correctional officers are leaving, is because they're being essentially forced to work so much, they don't have any time to decompress, be with their family, so on and so forth, because they're so short-staffed. So what are we going to do about that? Okay, we have to look at recruiting's not an issue. There are plenty of people applying, okay, according to HR. It's that retention aspect there. And I think it ties in with that good leadership. People like to work for a good leader. Now, what is a leader? A leader is not somebody that needs to get out there and rub elbows with those deputies that are taking calls and pulling marijuana plants out there. The leader is the strategic planner for that organization. He or she decides, what are we going to do, and then allows the people that they work with to go out and actually execute those plans. So that's what we need to do, improve that leadership. I'm the man to do it. With that goes improve morale. If people like working somewhere and they like working with somebody, their morale is going to improve. One of the things we can do is, they just got a raise, so that's one issue that's been resolved to some degree, is pump up the quality of life here in Calaveras County. Every one of us lives here. We've lived here for 26 years. There's an allure to it. We love living here, okay? There's something to be said for being able to work and live in the county where you're at. Maybe you're on duty, but you can swing by when your kid has that winter play at school. If you were working in Oakland like I did, that wasn't a possibility. Like hunting, skiing, fishing, all of that stuff there. So that quality of life issues, you really can't put a price tag on, but are beneficial out here. And then start improving those working conditions. Get the people here, stop the attrition, get people to stay here, boost our numbers, both in the jail and throughout the department, whether it's the non-sworn staff, deputies, command staff, supervisory staff, so on and so forth. And start looking at, I talked about a 5-year plan at another forum we were at, the shifts, the policies, review all of those things, the equipment, make sure that the goal is to put the best trained people with the best equipment to your aid as quickly as possible. And that starts with a good leader who sets the tone at the top. Thank you.
Mr. Garrahan and I agree, which is why I'm running. I'm challenging the leadership of the sheriff's office right now. My opinion, poor leadership or lack of leadership in the right direction. That's what I said in the very beginning. This is why I'm running. I disagree with the direction the sheriff's office has been taking. When it comes to how to improve morale, well, number one, everybody's leaving. It's a sinking ship. Everybody is getting off of that ship. COs, correctional officers, and deputies. So we need to make this, and I've said this several times, we need to make this a destination county. Not just the sheriff's office, but the entire county. We are not going to attract new business. We're not going to attract families to come here with little kids unless we start getting this county cleaned up. And part of it starts with the county budget, the county finances, and everything else. We're on the right track. We're on the way. The biggest economic driver in this county are retired people because they have retirement, they have insurance, or they have Medicare, and they come buy a piece of land, they buy a house, they come up here to retire. But they're leaving because a lot of it has to do with the marijuana in this county. And so we're losing that income. And the word of mouth gets around very fast. Don't go to Calaveras County because the living conditions are poor. And I've been saying this, I believe it's on I wrote an op-ed last year in September about the quality of life and public safety issues that we're suffering in this county. We are not going to attract businesses. We're not going to attract new families to come up here to live and work here because it's not attractive. So it's not just the sheriff's office, it's the county as a whole. So in regards to the sheriff's office, yes, deputies are getting a new raise. But again, they're still leaving. So that means there is an issue within the office. Morale is low. And numerous times we said this, Mr. Garrahan and I did say this in previous debates, and the sheriff said, no, it's not. Go ask any deputy, go ask anybody, they'll tell you. A few debates later, he admitted morale is low. So we do have an issue. They don't want to work here. How come they don't want to work here? That's something that has to do with leadership. Like I said, I've worked here and I work outside of the county. And I understand what it's like when you come home, your house has been broken into. You wake up in the morning, your car's been vandalized or it's even gone. All right, I understand that. I deal with victims every day. I'm in trial right now of a young girl that got a shotgun stuck in her face by a retired cop. We're prosecuting him because he broke the law. He threatened somebody. All right, I deal with victims all the time, so I understand and I know what's going through that person's head when they feel violated, their family feels violated, and that's who I work for. That's who we law enforcement are supposed to be working for, or for the victims and for the public at large. So we need to get, start hiring and recruiting deputies. To a certain degree, I disagree that recruitment's not an issue. I think it is. Retention is the issue. All right, we are not. I'm out of time.
Staffing levels are low. That's one of the hurdles that we need, one of the barriers that we need to breach. Again, like I said before, we're doing that right now, working diligently with our human resources department. We're working with a marketing firm to not only market the sheriff's office, but market our county so that people do want to come to our county. When we talk about morale, and maybe I used the wrong terminology that morale was low, guys are getting tired. They are working a lot of hours because our staffing levels are low. Part of it is because people are leaving, and a lot of it is because of the lack of money. Now, I never claimed to be the best boss in the world. People are going to be upset. If anybody here has ever worked somewhere, you know that not everybody is always happy. And as we are seeing in our youth, they're following the money. It's not that they don't like the job here, or they don't like the administration, or even me at that point. It's they're following the money. As I said earlier, I talked to 32 different counties throughout the United States. They are all having the same problem. So I don't know what magic wand other opponents are going to wave to attract people here and to retain people. Money has a lot to do with it. Antioch Police Department is not that far away. They're offering a $15,000 sign-on bonus. This county doesn't have the money to do that. You can go down to Lodi and Stockton and make more money. So attracting people to this county is going to take some work. And we are working on that, again, with this marketing firm and with our human resources. They've been phenomenal in getting people hired. I want to touch a little bit about reserves. I hear one of my opponents talk about bringing on reserves. Let me tell you a story about reserve officers. These are typically officers that have been retired from police work, and they come back as an annuitant. They work extra hire, and they do the same job as a cop. The issues are that if they've been out of law enforcement for over 6 years, like one of my opponents, they have to go back through the academy completely. Who retired is going to want to go back through the academy? If they've been out for 3 years, they have to still go back to a partial academy. So when you hear people say that we need to bring reserves in, that's difficult to do. Laterals. Our county is paid low. Mr. Stevens left this county because he wasn't getting paid enough. There's a clue. The county's not getting paid enough. So to try and attract somebody from another county that is making more money, there has to be a very strong reason for them to come here. Again, the fishing, the hunting, the hiking. But it's not happening. And I don't know what the magic wand is, but the sheriff's office and our county human resources department is working diligently on getting it. We are focusing more on our youth that are in the county, and we've got 4 of those in the county. She X'd me out, so I lost my train of thought. I have 4 of those in the academy right now from the county.
Okay, now I'm going to combine 2 questions because they are related. Explain how you plan on doing community policing, and the second one is how would you increase contact with the public so that residents can get to know the deputies? I think it has to do with the coordination between law enforcement and the residents of the community and relationship building. Do you have anything to share with us about that?
Okay, I'm going to use a little bit of my time to rebut a couple of statements that were made there. The sheriff's 2 years into his office, and now all these things are suddenly a priority. We've had 2 years to work on them. That should have been going on there. I think that the upcoming election probably has some motivation for getting some of these things rolling there. Now, as far as how we go through the academy, okay, I retired almost 10 years ago, but I kept my finger on the pulse, the subject matter expert, so on and so forth. The thing about it is, if I'm elected sheriff, I do not have to go through the academy again. I do my research, I found out, okay? I have certifications, I got my basic, intermediate, advanced supervisor, and management post certifications, peace officer standard and training. So I don't have to go through the academy again. Okay. Now, as far as community policing, that's something I'm familiar with. We did it in Oakland. I did it as a police officer. I did it as a supervisor, a frontline supervisor, a sergeant. I did it as a command officer out there. And it's not just communication between the law enforcement agency or the police agency and the citizens. It's involving all of the different elements of a community. Now, Mountain Ranch is going to be a different community than Valley Springs or Arnold. They each have their own identity, okay? It's working together with those folks, the business owners, schools, faith-based organizations, non-governmental organizations, fire departments, all of those things, working together, finding out what issues are, coming together. Sometimes it's not an answer of just locking somebody up. Cops will take them to jail. Sometimes it's making a referral, whether it's a mental health referral, and it's giving the deputies that authority to do that and that knowledge to be able to do that. Where, okay, this person's having an issue and we can't resolve it, but if they go to this organization or this agency. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Will it work here? I've heard, oh, well, we're too spread out. Nonsense. It will work. You just have to take the effort. It's got to be two-sided from law enforcement end of it and then the community. Right now, there's no community projects going on, community policing projects going on. There's no archives of ones that have been done. So it's what they call a name or a feel-good or name-only project. Okay, neighborhood watch. There's no functional neighborhood watch out there either. I just checked the website today and found out about that. Now, as far as deputies being on the street and interacting with the community, that again starts at the top. That leader, the sheriff, sets the tone. And you tell people, get out there, get out of your car, you have to go to the bathroom, you have to eat, you have to get something to drink sometime during your shift, you have to write your reports, make the effort to interact with the community. It doesn't have to be every day, but it has to be sometime. There's a person that, the business owner in Mountain Ranch here, has been a business owner for 8 years, has never had a deputy stop in there. That's easily fixed. You start at the top, you start telling people how to do it, showing them how to do it, set the example, and they will do it. And it will increase community policing efforts.
When I announced my kickoff on January 11th, I said, watch my opponents, what they do, because they're going to react to what I say and what I do. And I've seen that throughout this whole campaign. I'm going to rebut one thing. 2 debates ago, I said, how come the county doesn't hire an advertising or marketing firm to help us with recruiting? Now the county is doing that. Quite a few other things. I talked about the homeless issue. Other jurisdictions have started a homeless task force. I now see that the county is starting a homeless task force. So there's lots of issues that are going on in the county. Problem is the county is not doing any outreach. We're just, and I'm not saying it's because I said it, but it seems coincidental that after I say it, these things start happening. So when it comes to community policing, I was a resident deputy in Arnold for 2 years. That's all I did. I lived in the area where I worked, and I went to special school for community-oriented policing and problem solving, and problem-oriented policing and problem solving. We started off, and we were so successful in Arnold, they put a second resident deputy in Arnold. CHP got on board, they put a CHP officer up there, and then we had 2 CHP officers up there. So community-oriented policing is not a click word. All right, a lot of people say they toss it around, and they say we're doing this, we're not doing that. Community-oriented policing is a philosophy. All right, hear my words. It is a philosophy. It is a different way of approaching a problem and solving that problem. Mr. Garrahan hit on it a little bit earlier. You know, law enforcement's always been reactionary, but what are we doing to solve the problem? We're not doing anything. We're reacting. So I kind of equate it to a diet. All right, most everybody's been on a diet at one time or another. And what do you do for a diet? You change the weight, you lose the weight, You change what you eat, for a month, you're eating healthy, and in a month you reach your goal, you lost 10 or 15, 20 pounds, then what happens? You put it back on. Whereas philosophy, you change the way you eat forever. And that's what community policing is. It's rebuilding that relationship with the community because we are part of the community. Every deputy, every person in the sheriff's office is part of the community. There's not enough time for me to go into this because this is one of my areas of expertise, but community-oriented policing and problem solving is simply, in a nutshell, a way of attacking and approaching a problem and solving the problem. And we haven't been doing that. Regardless of what you hear, we have not been solving the problems. When people call law enforcement, they want a deputy, they have a problem, they need help. What's being done to solve that problem? It's not being solved. We're taking reports, moving on to the next call because, quite frankly, the calls are stacking up and deputy has how many calls waiting for him in line. So we need to rethink our approach to solving the problem.
I know the terminology resident deputy gets thrown out there a lot, and Mr. Stevens said he was a resident deputy up in Arnold. The resident deputy program is the ability for the deputy that lives in the area to be able to interact with this community, walk into those businesses. Now, I do have a resident deputy that lives in the Arnold area. I do have a resident deputy that lives in the Valley Springs area, and I do have one that lives in the Copper. I don't have anybody up here, unfortunately. I do have a young man who grew up here, who is a resident deputy up here, and makes contacts with all the businesses. Maybe not every single one of them, but he is up here and he is talking to people. I can't stand behind him and force them to go into the businesses. I can tell them they need to, but there's only so much I can do as a sheriff. I have other things going on, as they have also mentioned, that I shouldn't be out there rubbing elbows with my deputies. What I have done is I put a school resource officer back into our programs that we didn't have. That is the ability for our deputy to interact with the kids in the county. I am going to be putting another school resource officer in the program to work with the other side of the county. So that interaction, we all know our kids are our future, so why not start with our kids? So those are two things that I have done. When we talk, I want to go back to the marketing comment that he made. The marketing comment came out because this is something that we initiated a long time ago. It wasn't all of a sudden I decided to start doing some marketing with an outside agency because he mentioned it. This was already done, just like we talked about me talking to the feds. Well, I had been talking to the feds a year and a half ago, and he says he's had them in his back pocket. So don't believe everything you say. If you want to know what's going on, ask me. I've got nothing to hide. I'm here for you folks. You are my priority. Your safety is my priority. I have a fantastic volunteer unit right now. We have 27 volunteers that do extra patrols in the area. They make contact. They're in sheriff's vehicles. They're in sheriff's uniforms. So the contact is out there right now. Yes, the deputies are busy, but they still get out of their cars. They still make contact with businesses. Thank you.
Okay, this time we're going to start with Gary and then Rick and then Pat. The question I have is, how can we help the Sheriff's Department enforce the laws against cannabis? What role do we play in making this work better?
Whether it's marijuana, it's burglaries, it's theft from a mailbox or cluster boxes. Number one, people need to know their neighbors. Number two, when they see something, they need to say something. They need to make a report with the sheriff's office and go code enforcement. After the ban, of course, it takes effect, you need to make a report with the sheriff's office. But people need to communicate with their neighbors. They need to know who their neighbors are, and they need to be on a relationship level to where they feel comfortable. They can call them, and they can be able to report these things. It's no different than any other crime that's going on in the county. You see somebody driving up the road or going to your neighbor's house that you've never seen before, you should be on the phone calling the sheriff's office. You should be on the phone calling another neighbor. Do you know who that is? You know, if it's a Friday night, maybe it's a relative coming up for the weekend, but if it's a Monday morning when everybody's gone at work, probably not. So people need to get on the phone, they need to start calling, they need to start communicating with each other and start reporting some of these things that are going on. Not just with marijuana, but with everything else. Property crimes are the biggest, largest crime going on in the state right now. Aside from crimes of violence that Mr. Garrahan pointed out, property crimes. All right, like I said, theft of mail from cluster boxes, burglaries, breaking into your car, all of these. People need to start reporting these things because right now, not everything's getting reported. Same thing with a lot of marijuana, crimes against people that were growing marijuana. They were being robbed at gunpoint and they didn't report it. They need to report these things, whether they're permitted or unpermitted. Doesn't matter. There's a crime of violence. Public safety is number one, regardless of who you are. People need to make these reports and they need to be investigated. Period.
With what we've had going on in our schools, you've heard the saying, see something, hear something, say something. That holds true in the community. I got to go back to the neighborhood watch programs. Our neighborhood watch programs have been a roller coaster. We have people that come in, they start a neighborhood watch program. Some people leave, the president leaves, the vice president leaves, and then it goes back down and the neighborhood watch program goes away. So they go up and down, but that, you folks are the best ability for us in law enforcement to protect yourselves. If you see something, if you hear a dog barking that's unusual, if your neighbor's dog usually doesn't bark, call us. There isn't anything that is too menial, and I hear that a lot. It doesn't matter. It wasn't that big of a deal. Let us make that decision. Please call us and let us know, hey, you need to come and check this out, for the simple fact that if we don't know it's happened, we can't come and try and fix it. But you gotta tell us. Again, I gotta go back to the neighborhood watch programs and our volunteers. If you're gonna go on vacation, our volunteer, you can fill out a piece of paper and our volunteers will be more than happy to come around and check your homes. It does a few things. One, it gives somebody that you know that's gonna be checking on your home, and it puts a patrol vehicle in the area. We're very remote in this county. So there's some roads that an officer might not go down for a day or two. But if you live out there and you're going to be gone, and that resident, or even longer, I hear, but that's reality. We're in a very remote area. But if your residents, your neighbors are going to be gone, get our volunteer unit to come out and do a vacation home check on it, or just a residence check. They love to do that, and we're always looking for more volunteers. So this is part of our recruiting with him. If you want to come and volunteer with the sheriff's office and have the ability to give back to your community as a volunteer, please, we welcome you. And again, you can do the same thing as citizens. If you hear something, see something, please say something.
I think that what we need to do is not divide out or separate marijuana or cannabis-related crimes, any crime that occurs. That is the first step in community policing, is that working together. I don't want to beat a dead horse there. I think everybody has sort of an idea of how it works. But it is that interaction between the community. Now, I've heard a couple times, see something, say something. Well, what it comes down to is then we, me as your sheriff, and then deputies I'll be working with, need to do something. And that's not happening right now. I've heard time and time again, for even before I ran, is that they never show up. When they do, they say it's not a big deal. They don't take a report. Now, not every single time, but once you hear it time and time again, you realize that this is a problem. Now, the sheriff's office said, I can't make them get out and go into businesses. You're the sheriff, okay? You are the leader. That's part of the leadership. You don't have to say or make them. but you explain why it's good for them and it's good for the community, okay? But sometimes, being that leader, you have to tell people, yeah, you better get out of your car when you have time and go meet the people that are in your area, okay? So again, that goes to leadership, and you can make people do it, okay? Talk about the volunteers. That's one thing. Well, the sheriff just said there's 27. They have an excellent unit. I checked the website today. There are 10 people listed on there. A couple months ago, somebody intimately involved with the sheriff's office told me that there were 12 volunteers. So we have a disparity in the information out there. I know in 2014 there were about 25, and the number has decreased. So do your homework, folks. That information is out there. The other thing, reserve officers. It is an untapped resource. You've heard tonight, well, it's a bunch of old guys, okay? Let me tell you my reserve story. One of my son-in-laws, one is a Modesto police officer, the other one has a post certificate. He's an active duty Marine, he's a recruiter for Calaveras and Tuolumne County. He was actively recruited, he's not an old guy, he's young, okay? Extremely physically fit. He was actively recruited by a city in Amador County to become a reserve officer. He just got sworn in. Guess what? He gets no benefits there. He gets no pay. So people will do it. It's just a matter of going out, finding the right people, and encouraging them and bringing them on board. What I hear time and time again is, wow, we can't do things because of A through Z. Let's start looking at, this is the problem, what can we do in order to fix those issues that are going on there. Thank you.
Just so you know, in terms of community policing, I believe that we have an appropriate space available to have a outpost here in Mountain Ranch for the sheriff's department. I don't know exactly what the holdup has been, but we did have a station here that volunteers manned in the past. That closed, but we do have a space available now that we would love to have here for volunteers to man and for deputies to have as a place to stop off and visit from time to time. So if you want more information about that, let me know and I'll tell you who to talk to.
Can I address that right now?
Probably not. I'll get in trouble if I don't follow the program. The next question, and this time we're going to begin with you, Rick, and then come this way. What is your opinion of the state of Jefferson movement and its possible effects on the sheriff's department?
I think the state of Jefferson is a great idea. I think that the states, the counties that are trying to actively move in that direction have something good going. I think we're going to have a tough time with the legislators and some of our senators that are going to push back against it. I think that the ability for us to get away from the high taxes that our lovely Governor Brown has imposed upon us is going to be beneficial. I think that we would be self-sufficient as the state. From everything that I've read, I've been to a couple of meetings. I am a member, and just because I know it's going to come out, I'm a recent member. I've been following it to see what they're talking about and what they're doing, because as your sheriff, I was concerned as how it was going to affect us, because there is quite a bit of funding that comes from the state of California to the sheriff's office to implement a lot of programs, and I wanted to make sure that those programs and the ability for us to have those extra monies would still be there, and I believe they would be. So I'm not opposed to the state of Jefferson. I think that it would be a good idea.
Okay, you're probably going to hear the same thing 3 times tonight. State of Jefferson is not a bad concept at all. What it revolves around, and I talked to some of the folks in there because I want to learn. I ask questions when I don't know something. So I went to them and I said, what is this state of Jefferson about? It's not a secessionist movement, okay? They want to stay in the United States. They are true patriots. They're Americans, okay? What it is it's their concern with underrepresentation. And then the creation of that 51st state of Jefferson would, how should I say it, equalize or normalize that representation for the population out here. that makes perfect sense. Now, in the words of the people that I've spoken to, it's going to be a long time coming. Okay, they are working at it at a feverish pace, but one of them said he'll probably be dead before it comes around, so it tells me it's going to be a while there. It's not going to be an easy process. I think perhaps the best benefit to it is that state of Jefferson proponents also advocate for a strong sheriff. Okay, I'm a strong personality. I'll be a strong sheriff. Timelines probably aren't going to intermesh with the next 4 years being state of Jefferson, but that's another concept. If somebody's going to be in that leadership position, you better be a strong leader, and to have the support of an entire state, not just a community, behind that, and supporting you as a strong sheriff would be beneficial not only to the sheriff's office personnel working there, but to every community within that county there. Thank you.
So the state of Jefferson is not anything new. All right, it actually started back in the 1860s, or maybe 1880s, when they recognized the lack of representation by state and federal government for certain areas. It revisited itself again in the 1940s. A lot of people don't understand the history behind it. They actually had a governor picked, they had some legislators picked, and then one day, the country of Japan bombed Pearl Harbor on that date, and that's what put it on the back burner. State of Jefferson is nothing new. It's not that they're going to name the state Jefferson, they just had to pick something, and that was the one that represented our history in this country the best, using that name. So, yes, I signed the petition, my wife signed the petition, and our teenage son signed the petition several years ago. I've always been supporters of the state of Jefferson, and I understand and I believe in why it's being revisited again, because we have a lack of representation in the rural counties in this part of the state when it comes to assembly members and senators, because all of the voting majority is in the Bay Area and Southern California and Sacramento. We get put on the back burner. Just one real quick issue. Remember many years ago when the mountain lion issue came up, and what happened when it came to a ballot? People voted it down. They did not. They wanted to put it on the Endangered Species Act or Protected Animal Act. But tell that to the people that lose sheep or lose goats or lose their livestock to lions up here. They have no natural enemies except for people in cars. But down where's the voting majority? It's down in the Bay Area. Don't kill those pretty cats. Okay, but up here, for a lot of ranchers, it is an issue. So we have that lack of representation, and that's part of the issue. I support the state of Jefferson. I have a lot of people that are within the state of Jefferson that support me because of my stance. And I would ask people to do your research. Go to soj51.com or .net, I forget which one. Research it. See what it is about. The more the merrier. I've gone round and round with them, with the leadership in Calaveras and Amador County about, I don't think the process is our state legislature has to approve it, and then it goes to Congress to separate us. Some counties in Southern Oregon and some of the counties in Northern California want to create our own state. All right, not separate from the United States, but create our own state for better representation. And I personally, I just don't see them giving up the water. Because as soon as the water comes down from the Central Valley down to Sacramento, and where we live, we can tax it, and they're not going to give it up. That's just the first and biggest issue I see with accomplishing the state of Jefferson getting approval from the state legislature. And if they don't give it to us, then, in the words, we've been harmed. I'll stop there.
Would you all like to just stand up and wiggle for a minute? It's hard to sit for so long. Please don't go. We're getting close to the end.
We didn't need to wiggle.
Okay, let's get seated again.
We've been sitting on a 30-minute bench for an hour and 20 minutes. That's right.
Okay, let's go on to the next question. One of the strange things, to me at least, that's been going on, is that our governmental authorities, both federally and statewide, seem to believe that they have the opportunity to pick and choose which laws they like and which ones they don't like, and enforcement follows those choices. So this question relates to that. It said, how would you teach our young people to have respect for the laws of Calaveras County and the state of California? Because in my view, I'm not sure our authorities have respect for the laws. So how would we cross this barrier with our kids so the next generation has a deep respect and concern for being a law-abiding citizen? And I think we'll start with you this time, Rick.
Well, I think it starts with our school resource officer. And it starts with the parents is really where it starts. Our parents have to teach our kids the right thing and the wrong thing to do and say. But when it comes to the kids that are in the school, and I think that, I was a school resource officer for 3 years. And to me, it is imperative and so beneficial for a cop to be in the schools with the kids because everybody loves a fireman. I mean, that's just the way it is. Firemen, I mean, they do a fantastic job of what they do, and cops have always taken that back seat to where you're the bad guy, especially when we have to show up and take their dad away because they just beat up mom. So it plays hard on us in that aspect. But with the school resource officer in the schools, they can get to know these guys and understand that they're there to help them no matter what the case. We carry around little stuffed animals for these kids, so if we have to go to one of these domestic violence calls, we can get down on our knees, get down to their level and say, hey, you know, it's going to be okay. Your dad made a mistake, and we're going to work with him to get him back to you. So it's all in how it is approached with the kids. I still would say it goes back to the parents. It really does. But as far as law enforcement, to make sure that the deputies and the officers that are out there in the community are doing the right thing, because kids watch TV, they watch the news right alongside of us, and they see when these cops are shooting, if it's a bad shoot, or they're making it out to where the cop did something wrong. So it puts that impression in our kids' minds that that cops are bad. So it is an uphill battle for police officers around the United States to teach our kids that cops are not bad. We're there to help them and to show them that we're doing the right thing all the time. And again, I gotta go back to the school resource officer. I was there for 3 years, and I know that I made an impact on a lot of kids, and it was always a good impact because I'm very friendly to the kids. Hell, I used to go play tetherball and foursquare with them and play basketball with them. It's that interaction with our kids to show them that cops aren't bad people.
There's a number of ways we can help develop a respect for law enforcement, the laws, and community itself with our youth. It does start with parents, but as a high school teacher, I can tell you that parents don't always fill that role, okay? As a teacher, I can tell you, whether teachers like it or not, we are role models for kids. That is our obligation. This is how I dress for school every day, okay? Because I'm representing a profession. I don't show up in shorts, flip-flops, and a t-shirt like some of my colleagues do. Because I realize how important it is for that role model and representing the police profession to these kids. So that's how we start developing it. We can't force them to respect it. We lead them to it, if you will. Cops, police officers, deputies, we need to earn not only the public's respect, but the kids' respect. okay? Treating everybody fairly, equally, reasonably out there, showing them, whether it's through community policing, school resource officer, our one school resource officer we have right now is getting run ragged. He does not have enough time to do everything he needs to do out there, okay? Through no fault of his own. But putting that human face on it, that's how you develop that. Now, I will say that people are quick to jump on the bandwagon and say, oh, today's youth, okay? I've had some opportunities to see our youth in action. I served 2 tours in Afghanistan. I worked with young Marines. There was one Marine in particular. He turned 21 over there. He was on his 3rd combat tour, okay? He was a man, okay? He led a squad of Marines in combat, okay? I saw that time and time and time again, okay? They have a respect and a love, a respect of the law and a love of this nation. So I'm here to tell you that our future is secure with most of our youth out there. I see the same thing in the classroom, time and time again. Kids need a structure. There you go. And if you tell them what's expected of them, tell them what's going to happen to them if they don't fulfill that, and tell them how they need to fix it and the time that they have to fix it, they'll respond. I have some of the greatest kids going to Calaveras High School. I'm so excited about them. We just took them to Occupational Olympics last week. Out of 5 places, we took 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and a 4th place. So those kids, they certainly have respect for the law, whether it's marijuana laws, it's local ordinances, or state of California laws, because they have goals of becoming peace officers when they get old enough. So we are doing some good things out there. We need to continue that. And rest assured, we have a generation of youth that's coming up that will be great Americans out there, for lack of a better way to describe it.
I agree with what was said. Is school resource officers are an absolute vital part of a larger idea, which is outreach. Okay? When I worked here and I worked in the narcotics unit, we used to do what we called outreach. We'd go into the schools, 4th grade, 5th grade class, and we basically give them drug education. Why drugs are bad, what it does to families, what it costs, the social and economic costs. And I'll tell you what, it was amazing how many 4th graders could come up with every slang word you can imagine for marijuana, methamphetamine, heroin, and other prescription drugs. And it was actually disturbing because they knew this, and it's because they learned it at home. We cannot send our children to school for the school to raise them. That's not the school's job. The school's job is to try to educate them and prepare them for adulthood in that respect of learning. But it does start at home. And until we start getting parents on board, we're going to continue to have the same problem. One of the issues is, I brought this up a little earlier before I got cut off, was we have, like I said, the biggest economic drivers in this county are retired people. They get Medicare, or they have their own pension. They're leaving the county. Who's coming into the county? Medi-Cal applications have doubled to tripled from 2013 to 2016 in this county. All right, and I'm not saying welfare is bad, but these are people that are not working, and a lot of them are not motivated to work. So what are they doing? They're sitting around at home, and what are they teaching the kids? For Christmas, you get a new Xbox game or a new PlayStation game. All right, it does start at home. So I think more outreach, more education outside of school and outside of the home is absolutely critical, because our youth, we are losing a lot of kids. During this campaign, I've got people contacting me on Facebook about the drug house next door, the gang house down the street, and where are the parents? I see young girls walking down the street in San Andreas at 9:30 at night. They're 12, 13, 14. Where's their dad? Where are the parents? So we do need to do outreach in the schools, all ages, and not just drug education, law enforcement in general. So outreach, I think, is probably one of the biggest points, one of the biggest things that we can do to community, in our communities, to families, and some of those families, make them aware of what resources are available and what is available to them, and to help them raise their kids, and whether it be after school programs, she's getting ready to raise the X on me. And what else is available to them that they may not be aware of? Is that a primary sheriff's office function? No. Should the sheriff's office be involved in something like that? Yes, absolutely, because we're part of the community.
Okay, I don't know how many, the current number of active marijuana farms are out there. Maybe one of you knows that. But this question is sort of related to that. If yesterday's Board of Supervisors meeting, information given for 2018 is accurate, how will a ban work when folks are told that there are only enough funds for 300 eradications next year? And the reason that's an important question is the last I heard there were well over 1,000 grows happening. So how will it work if there are only enough funds for 300 eradications? And this time let's begin with Pat.
Okay, the realistic answer is it won't work. Okay? We have funds for 300. There's, I don't know the exact number. I've heard upwards of 2,000. I've heard 1,000. I've heard 1,200. But it's still more than 300. So, the numbers don't work. This is what is going to fix these problems. Okay? Is start with the issues that we talked about before. If you don't have enough people to do the job, no matter how earnestly you want to do it, you're not going to be able to do it. A couple of things you need to do to accomplish anything. You need the personnel to do it. They have to have the proper training to do it. They have to have the proper equipment to do it. And they have to have funding to do it. So if you take away any one of those, your efforts are going to collapse. So what we need to do is make sure we have each one of those. We have sufficient personnel to go out and address the illegal cannabis grows, in addition to all the other crime issues and community policing and neighborhood watch issues that we need to be working on at the same time. Do we have the equipment? I'm not going to send deputies out there ill-equipped. The job is dangerous. It's potentially dangerous going out to some of these rogue grows. I'm not going to send them out without proper equipment. They need to be trained on how to do it. Okay, and then we need the money to do it. So those are the answers. You've got to fix those other things before you can even address the problem there. Now there can be efforts made, but again it goes back to that, what is the output, busy work if you will, versus the outcome of really actually resolving the problem, true eradication, removal of those illicit sites. Thank you.
Nobody knows, or will probably ever know exactly how many marijuana cultivation sites there are. We can look at satellite imagery all day long and count them, and the numbers jump all over the map, but that doesn't include indoor marijuana grows that are in barns, sheds, garages, houses that we'll never see from satellite imagery. So the true number is like I said, we may never ever know. When it comes to the funding, law enforcement is expected to do we are expected to do our job with what we have, regardless. And if we need more money, we go ask for it. The Board of Supervisors has not denied requests for funding for new patrol cars because the fleet is aging, for marijuana eradication last year, for another administrative position within the sheriff's office. So the money's not the issue. It's a matter of staffing and getting to it. And I agree. I say this because, like I said, we're expected to do our job. So when people say, well, you never get them all, well, you're right. We won't. When was the last time CHP got every drunk driver? When was the last time we caught every child molester or every identity thief or every burglar? But we still investigate, we still pursue, because that's what the public expects of us, to still push forward and to do our job and try to protect the public. And when something is a public safety issue, that's what we're supposed to do, is go out and address that public safety issue. We need to look at it from a different perspective rather than reacting, taking a report, and then pursuing who did it when we should be attacking it from a different front. This is where the community-oriented policing philosophy comes into play. We need to approach it from a different way, a different manner to solve the problem. And the can has been kicked down the road with this urgency ordinance for 2 years. That's why we're in this position right now. Will we ever have funding to get them all? No. Will we ever get them all? No. And again, I look at other crimes. We will never get all of the crimes that are committed, or the people perpetrating certain crimes, or ever. And we don't need special funding for it. Sure, we'll take it. It helps. It helps the county with the general fund budget, or the budget that's given to the sheriff's office. But there's also outside source funding that comes from the state and comes from the federal government, and it should be utilized. So when we talk about how's it going to be funded, it's going to be funded one way or another. The county will give us, and we'll probably, for the season, we'll get so many, and the county will come down with more money for next season. And we'll continue to do the same thing that we've always done with all crimes, not just marijuana.
To answer your question on if we have enough funds to eradicate what 300 grows, that number 300, I was at that board meeting yesterday. I was there until 5:30 last night. And what was talked about was code compliance said that with a certain amount of officers that they could eradicate, or they could cite up to 300 illegal grow sites. So that's where that number 300 comes from. It has nothing to do with the amount of money or how many grows are out there. As I stated before, the Board of Supervisors has assured the Sheriff's Office and the county that they have set monies aside so that we can at least get through this year's grow season, because we have a ban coming into play. So the money's there. They've maintained the marijuana enforcement team. They've given us the equipment. We already have state-of-the-art equipment for all of our guys. We've gone to mechanical programs for removing these plants so that our guys aren't out there cutting them with machetes and they're getting injured. So we have mechanized our process so that it goes faster and it's safer for all of our guys. So the equipment is in place, the personnel is in place, and it looks like they're going to give me another 4 positions again starting in January. Unfortunately, we have to get into our budget year. But the positions are there and the county has the money. So, but to answer your question, those 300 was a number of citations that code compliance was talking that they could do. So it's completely different from any funding. Thank you.
This is the second to last question. This one and then one more, I'm told. So this goes back to leadership and staffing. What will be your strategy for building the strongest possible team of senior officer leaders? And what will be your strategy for developing new and journey level deputies? And we started with Pat this time, so we'll go with Gary.
People have to want to work here to stay here, and they need to have a reason to invest here. We invest in them, we hire them, we train them. Year, 2, 3 years go by, and they go somewhere else. I stuck it out here for 13 years before I left, but I still live here. I've always lived here, lived in San Andreas. So one of the things that will motivate people to want to stay here and work here is, and I'm not going to say, I don't say this because I'm being critical of what's going on in the department, but better investigations. One of my areas of expertise is, this is all I do is investigations. Very complex, very long investigations, criminal investigations, and one of the things that I do is I'm a latent fingerprint examiner. All right, if a deputy lifts a fingerprint at a residence where there's been a burglary or some other crime, and have an idea who that person might be, and they've been arrested before, we get what's called their 10-print card, and I can do a side-by-side comparison and tell you within a day if that person is the person who made that print, if it was made by the same person. We have 3 latent print examiners in my office, the Amador County District Attorney's Office. We don't have any here. So with typically the process is we take a fingerprint card, we send it off to the State Department of Justice, and anywhere from 30 days if it's rushed to 6 months to a year before we get results back. Sometimes it's much faster if we have an idea who it is. It goes to, if not, then it goes to what's called the automatic latent print system. So there's lots of other things that can be done to better prepare deputies. More training, other areas of expertise. One of the things that most people don't understand or realize is when law enforcement takes a crime report, whether or not there's an arrest, or if there's probable cause to arrest somebody, it gets sent to the district attorney's office. Okay, that level of probable cause is that reasonable suspicion that's enough to convince somebody that that person committed a crime. But to prevail at trial, it's a much higher standard. And that higher standard is what we call beyond a reasonable doubt. That convinces 12 people beyond a reasonable doubt this person committed this crime. So the investigations I conduct, I take from law enforcement, sheriff's office, CHP, any of the 3 police departments, sometimes State Department of Insurance, whoever it may be that looking for someone to be prosecuted, and I take those investigations and excuse me, I bring them up to snuff. I bring them up to a higher level. So I think that's one of the issues that we have in this county is there's one DA investigator. He cannot possibly do follow-up on a lot of the investigations that are coming in to the DA's office for prosecution. He needs help. So to elevate the deputy's investigative abilities is one of my areas of expertise that I'm looking forward to do. I gotta stop, sorry.
Building up our upper line staff and building our new young deputies coming in. The upper line staff that I have right now is pretty solid. They've been there for most of them well over 17 years. They're solid. They're here for the duration of their careers. They've been in this department. They enjoy this county. Most of them live in this county. I think only one lives outside of the county. So they're very solid in this county. The new deputies, we have a SWAT team. We have hostage negotiations. We have the investigations. We have our lake programs. We have off-highway vehicle programs. We have a dive team. These are incentives to get our deputies to want to be committed to this county and stay in the county. I talked about the marketing program, and more so than anything, hiring kids that live in our community. Like I said before, I've got 4 deputies that are in the academy right now. They're all local kids. So we're building that process right now so that we have a succession plan so that as the older folks retire out of the department, we have newer guys coming in. I've been attacked on my leadership numerous times, and I'm telling you, if you talk to the deputies, and you're going to hear that the deputies won't talk to you, excuse me, you're going to hear that it's against policy. If they are not in uniform, they can talk to you. Are we a close-knit group? Yes. But if you know the deputy and you get to know him or her, ask them, how do they like the way the sheriff's office is run? And they're going to tell you, again, not everybody. I will never say that because I'd be blowing smoke up my own dress. Everybody has people that are unhappy. That's just reality. But I'm telling you that 95% of the people that work in my department are happy with the way things are going, and they're looking forward to me continuing to be your sheriff and continuing to move the sheriff's department in a forward direction. I've made numerous purchases of new vehicles and equipment. I am doing the best I can with the resources I have to keep our department strong, not only for them, but for you folks, because you're the priority. And as long as we have the deputies that want to stay here, we will work with them and make them continue to want to stay here. We're not pushing anybody out the door. Again, people leave, and that's a matter of fact. but we're making it better and better as days progress, and we will continue to do that. Thank you.
Okay, you're gonna hear me talk about a concept that I've mentioned time and time again tonight, leadership. Something I'm very comfortable with, been a leader most of my career. Now, in terms of dealing with the senior members and the junior members coming into the sheriff's office, it all starts at the top. Now, right now, the sheriff just said we're not forcing anybody out. I would disagree to some point with that. I do speak to people that work in the sheriff's office. I speak to people that used to work there. I speak to people that deal with the different deputies and so on. And the perception within, to some degree, within the department and without, is that there's a good old boy system that exists. Okay? So it goes back to leadership. Setting the tone at the top of one of professionalism and of service to the community. Okay? Now, with regard to the senior members, they can be higher in rank, the captains, lieutenants, those supervisors out there, sergeants, but it can also be that deputy that's been there 20 years, and he or she is still a deputy because they didn't want to promote it. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Those are the holders of the institutional knowledge for that organization. Now, when I'm elected sheriff, I'll come in with a lot of experience, but guess what? The day I take office, I'll be the newest member of that organization. Okay? So, who would I need to rely on, in part, to keep things moving in a positive, upward direction? It's that senior leadership within that department, or recognizing them, making sure they know that they're valued, that they're doing important work, that they're respected by the sheriff and everybody else that's above them in rank there. Now, as far as the part of their obligation is to model for those new deputies coming on. Hey kid, this is how it's supposed to be. This is how you do the job. This is how you do it right. This is how we, as a professional organization, execute our duties out there for people. You want to imbue in them that the sheriff's office, the concept that the sheriff's office is a public service agency. Okay? It's not just out there to arrest people. It's not out there to be cool and drive fast, although those are certainly exciting and fun parts of the job. But it's a public service agency. And if you do that, those people will like their job. The community will like them. They'll build stronger bonds. They'll want to stay. They'll want to do a good job because they feel buy-in and obligation. I work in one of the most violent, crime-ridden cities in America. Bad working conditions, all kinds of stuff. And we had people that stayed. We had people that modeled. We had people, myself included, that had that concept that it is a public service agency. And when you do that, you're going to deliver the best possible police services to the public. Thank you.
The knees are getting old, it's hard to get up. Okay, so this is the last question. We've heard a lot of talk tonight about what's wrong in Calaveras County, or, you know, what some of the issues are, for sure. What is going well in terms of law enforcement in Calaveras County? And let's start with you, Pat, this time. Didn't we start with, let's start with you, Pat.
What's going well with law enforcement or policing? I like to use the term policing rather than law enforcement because the true scope of the job is much more than just enforcing laws and putting people in jail. But what's going well with it? Number one, you do have people still showing up for work. Okay, there are people that invested in this county, invested in that agency, and we want to keep them there. Okay. Now, we've heard a lot of things about problems and everything else, but those men and women that are driving those patrol vehicles out there are doing the best possible job they can, given the limited resources, pay, everything else that they do. We owe them a debt of gratitude. A debt of gratitude. That's what I meant to say. Okay? we should appreciate what they're doing for us each and every night out there. One of the other positive things I think is this upcoming election, where you, the public, will have an opportunity to choose the chief law enforcement officer for Calaveras County. Okay, we don't have to be satisfied with what we've had in the past. We don't need to be mired in mediocrity. We can move forward, and there's other opportunities out there. I think people at large, the public, are starting to realize that there's more than what we're just being told by officials, whether it be board of supervisors, whether it be the sheriff, whether it be the auditor controller, whatever, that there's more to it. They're doing their research. They're finding out their answers there. And because you're here tonight, and be involved in that process. So I think that all of this is, in the future, going to lead to a better overall, more professional sheriff's office, imbued with that sense of service to the public, and the beneficiaries of that, of what's going good in the department, is everybody that's a resident within Calaveras County, whether they live here, whether they come to visit here, or whether they work here. Thank you.
What he said. No, seriously. I'm in agreement. The deputies that are sticking it out, that are staying here, they're coming to work every day. They're going out every night when most of us are in bed, and they're out working. They're answering calls for service. They're gassing up their cars. They're going to calls, and they are going home every night, thankfully. What's going well is the county overall, the health of the county overall is improving. All right, we're in better financial, a better financial state. Our finances are starting to stabilize, and with that will be more funding or better funding for other county services besides the sheriff's office, which they all support each other. So you have the opportunity here to pick your next sheriff. You did not have that opportunity last time. So this is the time to ask questions of us, vet out, and who do you want as your sheriff? And not just based on what we've said here tonight, but look at our past history, our prior work histories or whatnot. The rhetorical question I give to you now is, do you feel safer, do you feel better today than you did 2 years ago? And a lot of times I ask people that question and they say, no, I don't. So I don't want to say we're rock bottom, but we have an opportunity to start going back up and to improve. And for the status quo of the county, especially the sheriff's office, to start improving with this next election. All right, like I said in the beginning, this election is not about who gets to be sheriff or the election itself. It's about the next generation. It's about the future of this county and the health of this county. And a lot of it, from our perspective, where we stand, is in law enforcement. If something affects your quality of life, then it's probably a public safety issue. If it's a public safety issue, it's a law enforcement issue. So this is your opportunity right now, and when you vote, to choose your next sheriff. Okay, I got a little bit of time left. So when we talk about that, what we're looking for is not just, like I said, not just sheriff's office, but other county departments that all support each other. They all work together. And when we need to improve, and we are starting to improve, the overall health of the county. Board of Supervisors that we currently have, three of them anyway, in my opinion, we're managing our money better. They're cutting a lot of funding that it was unnecessary, and investments are starting to go up. Investments in employees, like buying ergonomically correct furniture, so there's less workers' comp claims. Things like that. And we're still going to finish this year with a surplus. We haven't finished with a surplus in many, many years. Overall economy in the state is improving. The sheriff's office should be improving too, and that's why I asked for your vote. Vote for Gary. Let's improve the sheriff's office and the overall health of the county. Thank you. She's giving me the out.
Well, what's good in this county is, yes, number one, the deputies, but right behind that and really alongside of it is you folks. 2 years ago, I stepped into quagmire with what we had going on in this county. And I didn't run and hide. I didn't leave the county because I wasn't happy with the wages. I stuck it out with the county, and I've done what the law has allowed me to do to keep you community members safe. So when you go back to the rhetorical question, do you feel safer than you did 2 years ago? I would hope it is yes, but again, look at the totality of what's been going on and what I've had to deal with. I've never wavered in my stance of keeping the community safe and doing what I needed to do. As far as what else is good in the county, I have been able to get our deputies newer cars. We were running with cars that were well over 200,000 miles. They've gotten new equipment, and none of that has been able to be done except for working hard with the Board of Supervisors. I built relationships back in this community where CHP and CAL FIRE and our fire departments, there was a separation when I got here. I built that back up, so that's good for our community, because when our entities all work together, it makes you folks all safer. So overall, what's good in the community is you folks. The support that you've given the sheriff's office, you've never wavered in that, and for that, I thank you.
Well, that concludes this portion of the evening. Our candidates will hang out for a while to talk with you individually. But before we do that, why don't we give them evidence of our support and appreciation? I have to say that, I am impressed with all of you, and it gives me a very positive outlook for the life of this community going forward. Thank you all for offering to serve us in this way.
Does he downplays that?